I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's the meeting of the Finance Investment Committee of the Vallecitos Water District for Tuesday, April 9th, 2024 at 3 p.m. District office, not in the boardroom. Let's see, in public or public comment?
No, sir.
Let's dive right into the agenda. The first item is operating budget.
Yeah. So this is pretty much going to be the finance team show today. So we'll let Wes and his team go forward. I think they're just setting it up right now.
Sure.
But as you know, that we've gone through the several progression. This is the meeting number 2, not number 3 for the finance committee. This is the third meeting. So with that, Wes, if you're ready, go over the agenda and the packet.
I'm ready. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the third meeting of the fiscal year 2025 budget. Here we go. We got our party plan, Savings Avenue and Budget Street, just to get the mood set again. The agenda for today. We're going to have our 3 speakers. I think we had 3 last time as well, so it should be the same 3. But we have a lot of guest speakers here to provide more information. There's going to be a lot of information in this meeting. I sent out a lot of stuff last night around 10 o'clock, and Director Grossett was happy to get it at 10 o'clock. He was like, thanks, that's what I wanted to do at 10.
I wasn't kidding. I like looking at financial stuff late at night.
Man, I was doing it late at night last night, and I was like, yeah, it was 3 hours in the morning.
Yeah.
So the agenda for today, first we'll just go over the background, the progress update, just the budget calendar, like what we've done so far. After that, we'll go into the operating budget changes. There'll be a discussion as to what we've done from the operating budget since the last meeting we had, changes we've made till now, so some really cuts we've made. Then we'll talk about preliminary salaries and benefits. After that, and actually squeezed in between the salaries and benefits and the capital budget request, Mike's going to talk about water sales and water purchases, because we got some updates on that, as Director Althar knows. And then we're going to talk about the capital budget requests. Finally, we'll go into the next steps. So getting started, just a review of the budget calendar. In February, we put the audited numbers into the budget, and we updated the budget requests. And then on February 29th, we actually went over the budget calendar with the committee and did budget actual for the last 5 years. In March, we compiled the department's budget into the operating budget, and we worked on the current year fiscal projections. And then we started working on personnel and payroll stuff. And then the debt service forecast, which actually we're still working on. And then at the committee meeting on the 21st, we went over the operating budget requests. And then we discussed any board requested items. And we've taken those in consideration for this meeting. So now in April, we have incorporated the operating budget. We've actually started putting together preliminary salaries and benefits and the capital requests, and we're revising and refining. Most of the revising and refining has to do with the operating budget. What you're going to see today for salaries and benefits and capital are initial requests. This is our first pass at these. So you're seeing it for the first time. We've put them together and said, what does this look like? So from this meeting until the May 1st meeting, we'll be going through capital, seeing if we need to trim, because at that point we'll start looking at reserves, our days in cash, our debt service forecasts, and if we need to push projects if possible, if we can, and move things around a little bit more. And salaries and benefits will be, it's pretty close to finished right now. If we have any other personnel requests that need to be incorporated, it will be between now and then, and you'll be updated at the May 1st board workshop. So this is the finance committee of April 9th. And at this meeting, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about any budget changes, including any water cost estimates and revenue requirements, and then preliminary salaries and benefits, and then the capital budget requests. And we have several people here to help with the capital budget requests because there's a lot of them. Okay, so jumping right into it. I could have gone line by line, but there are a lot of these, so I just want to kind of show you all the things that have been done. So since the meeting we had on March 21st, we've gone through, and the majority of these cuts actually happened in water operations, because that's where we really need to dive into because of the the issue with the water authority and our sales being low. So you can see in total we've been able to cut $141,000 in water operations. We did that through reducing some of the maintenance. Actually, the ones that are starved were cut completely, postponed probably until next year if possible, or whenever we can get to them or afford to get to them. And the other ones that aren't started were just reduced. So, for example, the furniture was cut down from 20,000 to 15,000 in water and sewer. Safety consultant was cut down from 120,000 to 90, and things like that. So Most, and you can see conservation was actually reduced. Chris Robbins was able to find some savings by doing electronic reports, I believe, instead of printing all the newsletters. So we're able to save $33,000 there. So we have.
What's the difference? I'm sorry, what's the difference between those two figures, 154?
Pressing
sewer.
Oh, okay.
So you'll see two of the items, the furniture, that have water and sewer on them. So furniture and automatic faucets. So the furniture, 10,000, that is 5,000 is sewer, and the faucets, 8,000, 16,000 sewer. So it's 13,000 in total for sewer. So the majority of the cuts were done in water.
Okay.
So those are the operational changes since the last meeting.
And that's annually.
And there is some opportunity on the not on the conservation side, but on the education and outreach side to save some more. But but really, when I talked to Chris and we looked at everything, the only thing that remains is the Bill Dean program. So which we have $30,000 in the budget for, but that's the only thing that comes out. So that conversation is something that probably the full board will have to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, Chris doesn't have a very large budget. It's only 160,000 so for him to cut 33, it's pretty.
Yeah, cuts in the water.
Yeah.
Well, the mailing cost for the in between the pipes is actually quite significant. So reducing the amount that goes out to mail and only having either 1 out of 4 mailed instead of all 4.
So moving on from here, we're going to talk about salaries and benefits next. And here is this slide was actually emailed to you last night, just so you can see it's different than what's in the budget because I've got all the calculations shown here. So I did a comparison of projected versus budget, projected versus actual, budget versus budget, just to give you an idea of how those compare. So getting started, column D is the one that's the budget for 2025. So that's one that will be brought forward for approval of the board in June. And we're looking at, well, I'll get into the differences in a minute. But first I want to talk about projected versus budget for 2024. So projected at the end of this year, we're actually projected to be under budget by $1.1 million. Major reason for that is we've got just basically a lot of turnover. We had 11 new hires this year, and there's been delays in between the time that they left and the time we hired new people. We've also got some vacancies. We've got 4 vacancies currently, including the AGM position, that have a large dollar amounts that are actually causing the savings or resulting in a savings in salaries to budget.
So when did you assume the AGM?
My assumption the budget is 9 months of next fiscal year. So my goal is to have an AGM in place before our ops manager at Petrozzi retires, because at that point I got 35 years of experience with walking out the door.
Walking, crawling, or running? Crawling out the door. Crawling.
So we are looking at a projected budget versus budget savings of $1.1 million, and in total it'll be around $1.6 million because a lot of it's goes along with the salaries themselves, like FICA or Social Security and PERS are all directly related to the salaries. So we're realizing savings in all of those. And then I was going to go into the 1.1, which I kind of just did, which is the salary savings. So looking at projected versus actual, so this is projected 2024 versus actual 2023. We're projected to be about $72,000 higher on salaries, which isn't really surprising given the MOU that we had in 2024. But it is a little surprising because it should be much higher. But we are a little bit higher at 72,000. And then in total for salaries and benefits, projected versus actual, we're still projected to be lower at $167,000 lower than the actual from the previous year, and that's because of PERS. In 2022 or 23, actually, as you know, PERS had significant returns. They had 21% or higher. That resulted in us being 105% funded on our unfunded accrued liability. That's but then next year they went back.
So that's been whipsawing.
Yeah.
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 It's like a
in 2 years, we'll actually get more into PERS at the next meeting.
Okay.
We'll be talking about
I
our
was
PERS
just gonna
policy.
ask you about it.
And I'll show the historical returns and we'll talk about the PERS policy. But yeah, it basically went way up to 21 and came way back down to like -6 or whatever it is. So we didn't have to make an unfunded accrued liability payment, which saved us $802,000 in PERS there. We're going to see the opposite when looking at the budget for 24.
So are we thinking about a different alternate policy maybe
So
going forward?
You're on EWA's board, right?
no, not anymore.
Oh, not anymore. Okay. So EWA actually, I met with them several times. We went over their policy, had a lot of discussions. All the finance people got together and talked about whether we liked it and changes to it. So We actually helped them develop their policy. It's a very good policy. It's reasonable. It makes sense. We're pretty much gonna just copy, not copy it exactly, but use theirs and modify it for us. Um, I feel like we have a little bit more experience in dealing with PERS and the issues, and a little bit, I don't say, maybe a little bit more knowledge about PERS. So we'll tweak it for us and modify it a little bit, but it'll be similar to their policy.
Also, with the way we budget conservatively, we'll actually realize some savings in next fiscal year, because as I was mentioning before we walked in,
Vacancies.
so we're gonna have at least 6 people retiring between now and the end of the year, and there's always going to be a little bit of lag in filling those positions, and almost everybody who's retiring is pretty much at their highest longevity step, or pretty close to the top longevity step. So at the end,
Unfortunately.
not everybody, I said almost. So at the end of the day, you know, most likely when we hire somebody, they'll be at some other step that's lower. So we'll see we'll realize some savings, but it's hard to quantify. And for budgeting purposes, it's good to assume the most conservative.
Usually be conservative. But if we know, for example, Anthony retiring in December, we can budget 6 months, you know, his position. But we don't know if we're gonna bring someone in at a higher level close to his or that's gonna result. So usually, like James said, it's better to be conservative on that. So next we're gonna look at budget versus budget. So how are we doing 25 versus budget 24? And we're actually budgeted to have an increase of about, and Mike made a comment of the devil.
Yeah, we're not hiring the devil.
$666,000. $666,000 increase on salaries for 25 versus 24, and that's, I mean, 5.52%. That's basically the COLA, right? The CPI came in at 4.2, 4.8, and we got the carryover of like 2.7 from last year. So 5% COLA is the cap. So it'll be 5% this year on COLA. You got normal steps. So
Just to clarify, 3.8 for the CPI, and then we had the carryover.
Oh, is it
5.
3.8?
Yeah, 3.8.
So 3.8 and 2.7, yeah.
Yep,
So
and
then we should have a little bit of carryover after that, but not as much as it did for 4.8. So yeah, that's basically COLA, the normal steps on that increase, and that's assuming that we're approximately fully staffed going into 24, 25. And then you've also, so next you've got an increase in benefits of $1.5 million. Majority of that has to do with PERS. So this can get a little complicated. We'll get into it more with the PERS policy, but basically we now have an unfunded accrued liability of $13.9 million. So because we have so many assets in PERS, the swing, you know, we ended up $13.9 million unfunded. So that right now is they ramp up your liabilities when they do this, and it creates major negative amortization. And one of the critical aspects of the policy that we're going to be talking about will be eliminating that negative amortization. We don't want to pay 20% of our payment, because so 20% would be about $400,000. So we would have $1 million that we didn't pay. It would become another liability from next year, and then it would ramp that one to 20%, and then that would create another liability. It's like child liabilities that just keep populating. So our policy is going to say we're going to pay off the normal amortization and eliminate that negative amortization and negative equity. So the payment's going to end up being about $1.4 million. That's why we have the increase in PERS budget there. Again, it'll be brought for board approval, and we'll give you a lot more information at the May meeting.
And the crazy thing about PERS is because the numbers are a year behind, the
Right.
actuarials are another year behind. So Wes and his team actually will, without knowing the actual number, could almost estimate what our new number is going to be based on their projected or based on their actual earnings. So our number that we can project year behind, so we could use those numbers and make a decision. Because if PERS has a good market return, all of a sudden our negative 13 million goes to a lot less. And we went from super funded, just barely, to negative $13 million over a year or 2 year period, just because of their returns. So you're always going to be on that roller coaster, and we can mitigate for it to some extent, but you're still on that roller coaster.
So for 23, they had 5.8% returns. Now they have to hit 6.8% for them to be zero and for it not to create liability for us. So the 5.8% is going to create a liability, which will be more unfunded liability. So I expect it to increase in 23. We don't know what 24 is yet, but once they get that out, I can roll the assets forward and kind of do our total market value of assets versus the total plan value and get our unfunded liability. That's kind of how we differ, because I don't know if other agencies are rolling, they're kind of just using the actual valuations instead of rolling the assets forward and getting the current balance.
But again, just to kind of reinforce what it says, is paying off that negative amortization is gonna be important, because that just adds to our existing liabilities if we don't.
I mean, it's already a 6.8% liability, which is really high. So it would be our highest percentage liability that we want to pay off first. When you build in negative amortization, it's just a negative equity, it's just great. So that's
It was 4.8? Okay.
oh, it's 4.8. So then in total, salaries and benefits is budgeted increase by 11.94% or $2.2 million. So the majority of that being the PERS increase. Next, I wanted to point out we are actually budgeting for a decrease in one position. So you may remember that last year we requested a new position for the assistant. He's right over here, actually sitting right there. Eric's new position, the assistant operations manager. So that was an increase in the positions. This year we've actually moved the SCADA coordinator over to IT, and the IT one of the IT positions was vacated, and we haven't filled that. So that's resulting in a decrease in operations because the SCADA person moved from operations to IT. So we'll be going back down to 108.75. So moving on, next one is one of my favorite slides. It's very colorful and exciting. So like the party page, if I can create colorful graphs, it makes numbers fun. Here we got budget. That's like, no, so here we're showing
too late.
So here we're showing budget actual for salaries and benefits for the last 5 years. The bottom part of the chart being salaries and the top part being the benefits. So we can see budget actual over the last 5 years. And the reason for this chart is kind of just to show how we've been able to keep salaries steady over the last 5 years. Even with us growing and having more work to do, we're able to kind of do more with less. And actually, in our budgeting and our, by scrutinizing positions as they become vacant, we're able to realize a cost savings in budget versus actual. So, and this year is one of the biggest at 8.6%. So, while salaries are going up as a result of MOU and inflation in the current environment, we do have salary savings, and we are still trying to keep them as steady as possible.
What's driving the increase in the benefits?
That's PERS.
Yeah, it's all PERS.
And we'll do everything we can for that. I mean, if we decide that, talking to the board, if the board says we want to fully fund that, we can look at doing that as well. Right now, I mean, it's a tough situation because of the water sales and purchases being, we're probably going to be budgeting for a loss this year as it is. So we'll see. I think we have sufficient reserves to sustain the loss this year. Do we want to send a lot of reserve money to PERS? A discussion we can have later. So that's the salaries and benefits budget actual for the last 5 years. So next I want to kind of go into some of the initiatives that have been taken since 2016. So 2016, we actually had 115.25 authorized positions. Since then, we've gone down, and in 2017, we reduced it by 3.5 positions. And then in 2018, we cut another 4 positions. So that's been hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings for the district since then. And we've been able to keep it right around there for the last, 6-7 years. So we got back up to 109.75, but then again, we'll be coming down to 108.75 this year. So we've been able to really keep the FTEs steady, over the last 10 years or so, and do more with less, as I mentioned.
Yeah, and that's compounded with the fact that we are a growing agency. So the same amount of support staff or have X amount more customers, X amount more miles of pipe to clean, more valves, more customer service calls, so on and so forth.
So what's been the downside of holding the line?
Well, I think we had some fat to trim, to be honest, for a while. I mean, just plain and simple, we had some fat to trim. But we've done a lot of reorganizations within departments to reutilize people. One of the things that we've done, and you've seen it, the board has seen it, is we've reclassified positions to higher level positions, which has increased payroll, but we're getting more out of those employees, and still is much more of a savings than adding a full FTE. So the thing that this district is light on, for example, is at general administrative support. We have very little general administrative support because almost everybody, I see a lot of head shaking. Because almost everybody is working at a higher level and they're more productive and they're doing more. So those lower level positions almost don't exist. We're starting to see some more needs for those, because having somebody at a fairly high pay rate doing general admin is also a waste. But right now, kind of everybody does their own general admin. and it's still working, but as we grow, it's gonna be tougher.
How about things like project engineering? Could Jason use help?
Yeah, actually, there was
Yes.
a budget request for a new engineer in this budget. It's being held off because we want to see if we could do some restructuring within this capital department to make it more efficient. And we have new employees in there, so we still haven't realized the full production value of how much the existing team can produce. So it's something that probably will be coming back in the future. But first, Jason and staff need to see what their output capacity is with their new staff.
Sounds like you're getting a ChatGPT subscription for now.
We've got some things to get our hands around first. It's a big investment. We take it seriously. So.
But on the other hand, if you add another engineer, then it increases our capital output, which is also.
That's why I'm more.
It may not make a difference.
I don't think it should. Maybe it might just help you catch up a little bit.
That too. So,
And Jason knows.
It's a balancing act.
I'm always pushing on the capital performance.
So yeah, and one last thing I did want to mention on the slides, you'll notice that in 23-24, we've got 7 vacancies shown there. So it's important to note that that's as of today. So we're hoping to have at least a couple of those filled before June. So that number will probably go down to
And
5.
the 6 that you talked about, is that not including that, and
That's
then
not
also
including.
staggered as it comes out, like they're not all.
Yeah,
retiring at
so
the same
so
time?
that's not including that. I mean, Ed, there's 3 of them retiring by the end of the year, and there's 2 that I know that are retiring before the new fiscal year starts. But they haven't. One just put it in writing, the other one has not. So and there's 3 retiring around the end of the year, and there's 2 other potentials that are retiring by the end of the year.
Yeah.
So it won't really be sad. I think it'll be 2 waves, one before the end of the fiscal year and one before the end of the calendar year.
So,
And I'm not aware of anything else in between at this moment.
so we may have projected versus budget savings again next year.
That's what I was alluding
Yeah,
to.
especially because they're staggered.
Yeah.
Rolling, so stay around the same.
So that is the preliminary salaries and benefits presentation. From there, I'm going to turn it over to Mike, and he's going to tell you about water sales and purchases.
Sure.
Do you have any questions for me before I turn it over?
I don't, you have any?
Do not. Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks.
So I think the biggest unknown out of everything that we're going to discuss today is where our water rate's going to go. I was talking to Director Elithar a little bit earlier. So the initial projection from the Water Authority coming down from the Met is 13% increases for the next 3 years.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, our Prop 218 holds the line at 6.5 for the next 2 years, I believe, 25 and 26. So that's probably, it's not sustainable. So the numbers that we have in here, I just want to say, is that 13%. If it comes back, if it's different, obviously I'll update the numbers. This is this year's current estimate. So we have 9 months of actuals in here and 3 years of estimate. So water sales are projected to be slightly under 29 million. Our ready to serve, which is the fixed charge, is about 15.7. And our pumping cost recovery, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, is about 312,000. Water cost for the year, about 34 million. Right now, this estimate, based on where we are versus the budget, we're about $2.5 million in the hole net. When water sales come down, and Director Elithart, you've heard this before, but for Director Grosset mainly, when water sales come down, when there's a cutback in water, most of the cutback is in our tier 3 rates, tier 3 water. So we're losing our most expensive water. Well, when we cut back, we're cutting back purchasing our cheapest supply of water. So if there's a 10% cutback, for example, we're losing probably 18% in revenue, but only 9% in cost. So that's why a big mismatch when there is a decrease or depression in water sales. So that's one reason why a couple of years ago we tried not to make the tier 3 rates so high, because then you're really reliable on that.
Yourself.
Yeah, so we'll have to work that out with the next cost of service study that we do. So we'll take all that stuff into account. Oh, I was going to hit next on my computer, so that doesn't help. So for preliminary for next fiscal year, the water sales about 32 million, and that's an increase of about 11.2%. And that takes into account the 6.5% increase that we can pass through, and about a 4.5% rebound of water sales. Now, last year I talked about maybe potential rebound, and actually I think I kept them the same as the previous year, because 2 years ago it was an extremely wet winter. We're like, okay, that can't happen for 2 years in a row. Well, it happened 2 years in a row.
First
So-
time ever.
Yeah, so I'm kind of assuming a 4.5% right now that will bounce back, which is where we were 2 years ago. So not a big increase, but pretty doable.
Some
hopefully.
recovery from water sales.
Yeah, some recovery in water sales. So I'm ready to serve with the increase would be about 3.2% increase. Now here's the pumping cost recovery. Again, Director Elthorpe, you have the history on this, but pumping costs. So it's the cost to pump the water to the higher elevations. So Coronado Hills, we have 10 pump zones.
Okay.
And it's the costs are dependent on how high the lift is. So it's per foot lift. And we reestablished those rates probably 6-7 years ago. And the goal was to set it at 95% of the operating costs, not the actual replacement cost of the pumps and motors and all those things. And we had a plan to get there within 3 years. And we assumed that SDG&E was going to raise our rates 4% per year. Thanks for laughing, because now I don't have to.
Yeah.
So the rates haven't gone up to 4%. Plus, we only had a plan to do that in 3 years. Well, in 3 years, we have not increased those pump zone rates. So now we're even further behind.
But the pumping cost is only the electricity, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's only
yeah,
electricity
so
costs.
Let's clarify that. So the pumps
But I mean,
benefit the higher road, but everybody pays for maintenance of the facilities, all facilities. The pump zone is only the electrical cost of pumping, and 95% of the electrical cost.
So what would be the impact if we put 95% of all the other pumping costs?
Well, do you mean the maintenance costs?
Yeah.
And replacement costs for
Because
the pump
that
stations?
means the whole district is subsidizing.
Yeah, so we have
that
about
class.
3,200 customers on pump zones, roughly.
Roughly around that.
Okay, so we have a little over 3,000 customers on pump zones. And the maintenance portion on the water side of our pump stations probably drive, I would have to say, I don't know, you
I
might know
think it's
this.
about double the electric cost.
The electric is double by itself, but if you add
No, I
in,
mean the rest of the cost.
yeah, it's gonna be significant, because if you think about linear assets, valves, maintenance, pipelines, maintenance, even though that makes up the majority of the asset value, the maintenance majority of it is probably happening at our, what we call our vertical facilities, which is our pump stations on the water side.
Yeah,
And pressure reducing.
when we looked
stations.
at this 6-7 years ago, it was a substantial increase. Even just the increase we did in the electrical costs, we had
It was way
customers here with pitchforks and torches.
Yeah, we had a full boardroom.
Right, and if we'd have gone the full tilt, then yeah, I think probably would have had some
If
mentions.
it's not too much trouble, I'd like to see the impact of all the pumping
All-in
costs. 95%.
95% of all in.
Yeah, so I'm glad we're having the discussion now, because we were talking about putting something together for the May 1st
Yes.
meeting. So we can start looking at pump zones, what needs to happen to get those caught up, and you know, Mike is gonna.
So for Director Grosset's benefit, we set it at 95% because we felt like the whole district, whether you're in a pumping zone or not, you get some benefit of that elevated storage, like in an emergency that could be backfed to the benefit of customers that aren't in pumping zones.
That makes sense.
And in most cases, that is true. We do have a system in our pump stations with a clay valve. And we
Pressure
can-
reducing.
And in fact, when we rehabbed Sage Candy Tank, San Leo Hills was actually getting their water from South Lake Pump Station going up Coronado Hills. We gravitated over to Double Peak Tank, and then we cascaded backwards through our pump zones to feed that whole area for 11 months. The water operators did not get any sleep. It was a really, really rough 11 months, but that is true.
Yeah, but yeah, it has value
But
for
this-
everybody.
This is an important subject, because this is something that the district needs to tackle sooner than later, because that difference, if we just keep it electricity, we already. need
Yeah,
to
we
double.
at least need to take care of electricity, but I'd like to look at in total, just for fairness.
Yeah, we also need to look at what we're gonna do going forward as far as setting it, so whether we.
Yeah.
you
So
know,
we keep up with it.
What I'd like to do is, well, what we talked about doing is passing through those rate increases, in my opinion, and just having that built into it.
And it's not a 218 for pump rates. It's something that the board can adopt, and it's in place the very next day. But however, there's two things that brought people to our boardroom that were unhappy. One was pumping rates, because mainly it affects farmers, avocado groves. And the next thing was capacity fees, which affects developers. Those are the two things that fill the boardroom. And those are the only two things in my 19 years here that's filled the boardroom.
I mean, the only thing worse than being a farmer in the valley is being a farmer on top of the
Yeah.
hills here. And that's what we got.
That's what
A
we
lot
got.
of objections from the Coronado Hills area.
Yeah, and Deer Springs and Wolf area. So, to be honest, the most population, I believe, I know Emerald Heights is on the pump zone, but the other area of most population is really the San Luis Hills area, because they have two pump zones. They probably make up the majority of it between Emerald Heights and that's probably, I would say 90% of the customers, they didn't come into the border. It was the farmers. So it was the 10% that came in.
So a lot of agricultural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were pretty much all agricultural customers, avocado growth too. So, but it's something that we, as the full board, need to strategize on, and
Yeah, I
Wes
think
and
that's a policy discussion.
yeah,
Total total pumping.
and a timing decision. So,
I mean, the majority of the pumping, the permanent cost is power. It's like, we're budgeted like $1 million, and it's 714 for power. Go on, Mike, we'll let you proceed.
Okay, so then the water costs are projected to go up about 38%, 38% to 38 million, 38%. Probably if they had their way, right?
so that's over 3 years, right?
Yeah, actually probably is.
39.
So it's 13%, and as I said, I heard rumors of 13% for the next 3 years. So that's kind of unsustainable. So really the percentage increase relies on the mix of water, as we'll see on the next slide. So the mix of water, I'm gonna say we have different supplies of water and different sources of water, but a lot of them come through the valves and they all get mixed in, so you can't really follow a molecule of water. But we do have a contract with DSAL, it's a take or pay contract that we have to pay for 3,500 acre feet. Price per acre foot for next year is $3,700
I
bucks.
didn't realize it was that soon that it was getting to 3,700.
Yeah, and a 39, I think, for the following year.
Yeah,
or
it's
something like
basically
that.
hitting 4,000
4,000.
within 3 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's a take or pay contract. So it's $13 million.
That's what I wanted to cut it. Remember when I was talking to Dan?
Yeah.
So we have our water that we have a water exchange agreement with OMWD. Well, they'll treat our water and we pay a discounted treatment rate of 20% discount on that. And their treatment rate is $400. So we get an $80 per acre foot discount for any water that we take from the OMWD.
So we've been trying to maximize.
Yeah, we're trying to maximize it. There've been some issues a year and a half
Been
ago.
down a lot, and then when we were rehabbing Sage Canyon tank, we couldn't pull any from them, so we,
That was us this time.
Yeah.
So.
yeah, so now, yeah, having issues.
Yeah. And then the remainder of water, I'll say we take is SDCWA water. We also have, and I put this in here for Director Elotherapy requested this. We have an agreement that we can take extra desal water if they have it, and we get charged at the regular water rates. So it's an issue from back before. So again, 3,700 for desal water, 1,800-ish for OMWD, and 1,900 for the water authority.
We have that delta that we're getting back from them from the issue at our connection a few years ago, if you remember that, Director. So we're tracking that as well, and we have 10 years, so 2031, and in the summertime, we're just cranking that desal water
There won't
up.
be any problem getting it in the 10 years.
I don't think we'll have any
Yeah,
trouble.
we'll
We'll be done before 10 years getting that
Yeah.
back, and then, like Mike just said, anything over 3,500,
The-
we're
the
getting
good-
a cheaper
The
rate.
good thing is we with the agreement changes could take extra molecules of desal water, which is higher quality, and we'll always pay that price. While before they could have charged us at the higher rate.
Right.
So that's still win for Vallecitos. So
Okay, I think I have it in here. Let me just see if we can do this real quick. So I think our all-in costs, our average cost per acre foot is 2,800, 2,831, 2,832 per acre foot. That the melded cost of all of that. So the commodity cost portion of that is 32 million, and the fixed charges that they put on us is about 6.4 million, for a total of $38 million. And again, the 38 million divided by, and we're projected to purchase almost 13,600 acre feet come to 28.32 per acre foot.
And Mike, that fixed charge, that's with the new adjustment, with the new MAR calculation.
So that's 13%. I haven't gotten any details broken down.
But yeah, our costs are gonna go up, but it's gonna go up. I forgot how many percent, but it's
Right.
gonna go up because now they're moving more dollars into fixed costs.
Shifting it.
Yeah.
Fixed.
Mhm.
Yeah, and they do a lot of shifting every year between fixed and variable and things like that. So it changes the mix of water. Obviously, the higher fixed cost you have and as sales get compressed, that's a higher amount to put onto the remaining acre feet.
Right, so the rate.
So the rate, the rate goes up. So that hurts us
Now
too.
you're getting these salaries, but they're not just arbitraging.
Good question.
Yeah.
Talked about at length with the settlement.
Yeah, no, we
Litigation.
run water quality samples, so we know. We're in communication with them constantly. They let us know immediately when the plant's gone offline or if it's scheduled to go offline. But we started drawing water quality samples just downstream from there to make sure it's an obvious difference.
And it comes from two separate valves. So one valve is turned off from the aqueduct, so to speak, and the other valve's turned on from the desal plant. So you have to physically turn off that valve and turn on the other one for us to get
Didn't
water.
we agree to put in a flow sensor or something? That was discussed. I don't know.
It was actually the water quality meters that we put on, they're online, so we do a physical grab sample in the system, but we also have online analyzers now
I
that
thought there
are,
was some other device we were gonna put in.
it all goes through the same flow meter. So like James said, it's actually, if this valve's open, this one's closed, you're getting desal water. If it's switched, then you're getting a blend from.
I thought we
the other
were gonna
pipeline.
get maybe a position status or something remote.
Well, there's, those valves are actually manually operated, so there's no electricity in that valve. Yeah, it's out in the street, so we figured the best way to know would be water quality. We can pick up exactly what the differences are with it. So.
And I think during one of the next meetings, we'll go into more detail on what that means to the consumer, to our customer. But again, with a 13% coming in, even if it's down to 10, that's why I said last meeting, I don't see us not passing through 6.5%. Because the costs are already, even if it comes down to 10, the costs are still going to be way more than what we pass through. I think that's it.
And just
So-
as a reminder, the water cost is 75, 72%.
It's getting higher, yeah.
Yeah, 72 and climbing percent of our budget. So, we're looking at trying to make all the savings to keep our costs down, but if the 72% goes up 13%, it's hard to overcome
And the
that.
water authorities is 90 to 93%. So there's very little ability to find any savings that make a difference.
Yeah, and when they present theirs, they talk about debt service, capital costs, and water purchases, right? So we only say water purchases straight. If we included our capital costs as well, it would go up. So one of the things Mike and I were actually talking about yesterday, and Jody was with us on this, is while we're only approving a 1-year budget, we do a 5-year and a 10-year plan. And it's very important for us to look at that 5-year plan and try to, we don't want to budget for a loss every year. We can't do that. It's not sustainable. So we're planning and looking at what we can do to make that loss come back to zero. So we, looked at the situation, and more than likely next year we're going to be doing another cost of service study, probably changing our Prop 218. If we do another 3 or 5 year, so that we can get rid of it, because with the caps, it's killing us right now having that 6.5% cap on the water authority.
And we thought we were in good shape.
We did, and unfortunately things changed. So we'll be looking at that this year. I think that whatever they're being where they are, and I'm kind of guesstimating right now. So like I said, I'll put this together, the 5-year reserve projections with the raising cash and stuff. And as long as we're not below our floor, we have healthy reserves. This year we should be able to sustain it, but next year we're going to have to revisit it and see what we can do about getting it back to zero.
So we're really hoping to hit the ground running at the end of this calendar year, to bring it to the board early next calendar year in 2025, with even a goal to maybe do kind of smoothing out, so to speak, rate increase maybe as early as July 2025, with another one in January 2026. So this way it's not just this huge jump at once. Plus, if we did that and got something improved in that rate, it actually really helped balance the books better, where it would make long-term sustainability of future rate increases, mitigated quite a bit. So.
So we'll have certain assumptions built into the budget, as we always do, towards the end of the reserves, where it lists our assumptions for the outer years. And some of those you'll be like, wait, that's above our Prop 218, but we have to make nothing's being approved right now by the board. Those are assumptions that we were saying we have to make in order for us to be in a healthy financial position. Doesn't mean it's necessarily going to happen, but this is, our financial plan. So we'll be discussing that more in the next two meetings where it starts to get interesting. Continues to be very interesting.
You got color, so it's
Yeah, lots of colors. There we go. Speaking of interesting, Jody's doing the next part of the presentation.
All
So welcome, Jody.
what an intro.
The fun capital improvement program budget. Okay, so every project has its own summary budget page similar to this. There are around 70 of these pages in the budget document, which are all rolled up into a CIP master list.
Each has a different vote icon.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're nice.
The project managers
that.
picked
It
out.
actually helps when you're flipping through it too. I know Wes likes that because you go, "Well, I know, I'm looking for that picture."
When I came out, I tried to make it more professional because it used to be even worse. But then Jason came out, I was like, no, I like this stuff. And he ran with it and it just became a state cartoon. I like
It's not as bad as John Fosco.
He'll throw stick figures and really good.
I had the Hamburglar or something on one of the projects. It's not nothing to do with it.
Dung beetle.
Yeah, you got.
Dung beetle.
That was me.
Oh, okay, sorry.
You admit that. It was for the treatment.
It was solids handling. Yes. So you gotta find the hill you want to die on. That wasn't it. All right.
Okay, so at the top of every page is the project title. There
Trying to
is,
roll it
oh, what
back
happened to
I'm
the,
trying.
Oh.
Okay, got it.
and then there's a description section that describes the project and why it's needed. The project manager and project number are included. On the right is the department that's requesting the project and the funding source of the project. And then there is a comment section that includes more detailed information about what the project is going to accomplish. And then there is
Where are
a,
these stored when you're not using them? Is there like a database or?
Yeah, there's an e-logger. We have a software program called e-logger. So when I started here, they were all in Word. We had individual Word documents for these, and it was my worst nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
Something like this.
He's just got it up.
And I guess my question is there like private notes that you all keep on it as well, like to help management kind of track what's?
Yeah, there's a way in e-logger to annotate information. So, and I think each individual project manager probably does something different.
Yeah, we have an extensive files that support the numbers that you see here.
Okay.
Spreadsheets. It's all structured data, right? It's all in a database. We're not doing like Excel.
I was worried it was.
I mean,
word system.
some folks are doing
I'm looking
Excel,
at the
but
document, I
yeah.
thought it was just the word system.
So
No.
we took the old one and to make it as sort of transition friendly as possible. Sometimes when you switch processes, people have a little resistance to change. So we took the old one and kind of just converted it to e-logger and did it almost exactly. So it looks like the Word document.
Just for the community's reference, we kind of went over, but we really have two main funds: water fund and sewer funds, and within those funds, they're separated into two additional funds, which is replacement, which has the 0, and if that's 10, that's capacity, which is expansion.
So just to clarify,
Yeah.
110 is replacement.
Sorry, other way around. Yeah.
120 would be capacity.
Yeah.
But that's critical though, because I mean, as far as talking about the funding source, because that's where we identify capacity, which is funded by development only, and replacement, which is funded by rates.
So yeah, so from a budgetary standpoint, if you see that it's replacement, then it's hitting rates. If you say it's capacity, then it's really coming out of the developer fees.
Got it. Sorry for the continual interruptions.
okay, so next section is the project spending plan. Includes the previous spending on the project and what the subsequent 5-year and thereafter spending plan is projected to be for an overall 10-year spending plan projection. And then the estimated project timeline includes the date the project was approved, the planning, design, construction phases, and when they're going to begin and end, and when the project will be completed. And here is the top
Yeah.
left portion.
Study all the numbers.
Yes, this is just a portion of the CIP master list, which is an index of all the capital projects. And it has been separated into 4 sections for presentation purposes. You can see here that the project page on the previous slide is listed here, page 42, and that references the page of the budget document that the project summary is located. This entire list is divided into 2 categories of projects: carryover projects and new projects. So starting with the carryover projects, which are projects that were budgeted for in prior years and have not been completed yet. This $85.7 million amount is being carried over, is a total project budget plus any budget adjustments to date. And then the $19.3 million is the projected amount that will be spent on these capital projects as of 6/30/2024. We took March project expense totals that were used to project out 3 more months for this 6/30 total. The $66.4 million, which is the difference between those 2 amounts, is the carryover budget amount to be spent in future years. And then there is a total of $78.1 million in new requests, which are any adjustments in costs to those projects. The 3 largest requests are to increase the land outflow parallel sewer section project by $40.5 million, the Twin Oaks Valley Road Sewer Improvement Phase 1 project by $21.1 million, and the chlorine contact tank expansion project by $4 million. And Jason is here to tell you more about these significant increases.
Yeah, I can do that. So the land outfall project has, just for reference, it's been on the books since 2008. So it's been around for a long time. And as you may recall, our land outfall is the pipeline that connects lift station 1 all the way to the Encina plant out in Carlsbad, right? It's about 34,000 feet of pipe that's 24 to 54 inch pipe installed in 1986. It's been identified that it has capacity issues. So when this project was created back in 2008, it was to increase capacity for the entire stretch. Over the years, that project scope and budget has changed. The latest iteration is we've broken out the Section A component of the outfall, which is the section that comes out of the tunnel, which goes underneath Albertsons, for just reference point along just off of Palmer Airport Road. So from that point all the way to El Camino Real, there's a short 1,500 foot gravity section, and the remaining portion is pressurized siphon. So this particular project is going to do a hydraulic study of the entire stretch from lift station 1 to Encina, and then do a 30% design for a parallel siphon from that point just outside of the tunnel to El Camino Real, and then an upsize of that little gravity section. So this project last year, that number of, and I think we had like 11 million or something, was sort of a placeholder because we really didn't know what those actual costs were. You may recall in August, the board approved a contract with GEI, and it was that $900,000 for a 2-year contract. And that was to push this project forward. Again, it's been on the big since 2008. We haven't moved the ball. Why are we moving the ball now? Well, we've had significant sewer spills. In fact, we had 3. We had a 50,000 gallon one in 2020. We had 2 in 2023 of like 152 different events, but totaling about 150,000 gallons. We had a small one this year in 2024, just in January. Today, we've had no fines. We've had no fines from the state for these spills. And I know
So Jason,
Yeah.
So the 2 figures, the 11 plus 11 carryover plus the You-
51 million.
So the total of 51, how much do you actually project to spend of that 51 in this fiscal year?
Oh,
So we'll show the 5-year spending in just a second.
Okay.
And it-
Yeah, so of that, our plan is to spend about 800,000 next year. So it's stretched out. The bulk of that cost is in future years. So there's no expectation we're gonna get there. And so right
Yeah,
now,
it's hard to tell.
right, yeah,
what you're
you gotta look back at that sheet that Jody showed, and it kind of lays out that
There's that
schedule.
layout there.
Good.
And just to clarify, this project is, I believe, pretty close or either 100% capacity project, so it doesn't
Yes.
hit user rates, but it
Correct.
does hit developer fees.
Correct.
So one of the things that we're looking at this project is actually, can our developer fees accommodate it? Yeah, so that's another thing we'll be looking at in the near future is updating our development fees.
Yeah, so this project has been studied in 2001. We've got a study. It's been referred to as the ECMAR study. You may recall it. It's been studied then. It's also in our master plan. So this is a project, again, it's been on the book. It's been studied. It's been looked at a planning level. Now we need to kind of dive deeper because of the SSOs that we've had, because we're seeing these atmospheric rivers hit and we don't want to get fined. Now there's that need of, oh, we need to really make some progress on this. So we took some action last year with the board's approval. We put out an RFP. We got 4 proposals. 2 have been selected to move forward to that next round. Those 2 consultants will go to interviews this month. The plan is to select that and bring that to the board for a design contract award in June. Expectation is that it's going to be around, of course, this will be a negotiated price, but it's going to be in the order of 2.5 to 4 million for a 2-year contract estimation right at this stage. So these numbers,
And they're actually building that part from Albertsons to Encino?
so this is the design.
They're just.
So yeah, it looks
This is
like
just-
years 4 and 5 is probably actual.
Yeah, so
construction.
for the next 2 years, the plan is to design this project. And what it's a study and to get us to 30%, which I know that seems like you're not even getting all the way to the end, but a project of this magnitude with the environmental concerns, we have to do alignment studies, there's outreach, there's a lot of moving pieces.
There's actually the
There's a lot
environmental
of
portion.
Yeah, there's a lot of coordination with Carlsbad Buena because Buena Sanitation District and Carlsbad have capacity ownership from the El Camino.
Yeah, but not in this section.
No, correct.
No,
But
it's like,
but this project will include a hydraulic study of the entire, so for a small portion, there's going to be coordination there, and which also is reimbursement back to us, but it's a small piece. So it's a lengthy project. That puts those big bulky construction dollars out in future years, and then there's going to have to be some decisions on how does that affect capacity fees and timing and all that. So we're just trying to get that ball moving.
If we're talking about the 900 that we spent, money well spent, did they deliver on
So-
everything?
They're still in process.
Yeah, so it's been really good. So instead of adding staff, which is something that's always been sort of a big investment, we've resisted that. This was a new concept to bring in a program manager. They spent about $145,000 to date. They're about 9 months into a 24-month contract, so that's good. We're getting a good bang for the buck. And it's allowing Ryan and his staff to focus on other projects. This project has never been able to move forward. We're moving it forward, and that's because of the decision to bring on that consultant.
And Director Rosa and Director Elhar, kind of to answer your question and your concerns, when we get through this process, get a new consultant on board to actually start the planning design, Jason and his team are going to reevaluate the use of an outside project management compared to what it would be to bring it in-house. Because when you bring it in-house, you still need consultant help because we don't have all the resources. We don't have the specialties, the structural, the environmental, the geotech, which a lot of the consultants either have or they have on their team. So when you bring somebody in-house, all that doesn't disappear. It gets reduced.
And when you go outside the same, you still have internal staff that have to manage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna really take a hard look at that and almost do a kind of a cost benefit analysis. So this way, before we look at moving large projects forward like this, we kind of understand where that return on investment is.
Yeah, so everything's sort of queued up for spending that 800,000, which is what we're budgeting for next fiscal year. So we feel pretty good about that. And again, with having GEI on board, they're helping to move that train for us and allow us to focus on other projects.
They've been pretty consistent as far as who's on the project.
Yes, yeah, we've had the same PM since the beginning, since the proposal phase, and I don't see that changing. And again, like James said, they bring in that expertise, which has been really helpful. So that's that project. Any questions? And there's a lot of history and there's a lot of things, moving pieces on that project.
Build above ground sewer.
You see Ed get
Sometimes
really.
it is above ground.
Yeah,
We don't want it above ground.
That's what we're trying to prevent.
Yeah,
It keeps good stuff in the pipe.
that's right.
The second project, Jason, if you don't mind, because I've had some history talking with the board members about
Yeah.
this one. So as the committee members may recall, the Twin Oaks sewer was the one that the city was interested in, and some of you may have gotten calls from either city council members or somebody, developers that are in that area. There's no capacity in the sewer over there, so we've created a project working with the development community on that project. The beauty of this project is now that we actually have studied what we call a sub-area master plan, which the board got a presentation on, now we understand the cost. That cost done up. But if we don't get the capacity fee increase to pay for this project, then we're not doing this project. It's simple as that. And this project is still mainly capacity. It does have a replacement component. I think 16 or 17 million of that total fee is capacity increase. So, and the staff, Jason's staff's already on the way. I think we have a meeting with the Building Industry Association tomorrow. We've already met with the developers within the Twin Oaks Valley and their consultants and the city, and they're supportive. So we're on a process, and the board will probably be seeing, depending on the type of resistance we get or don't get, something before the end of the fiscal year to adopt a new capacity fee, which increases the capacity fee to pay for this Twin Oaks job. If there's resistance or we don't get that approved, then this project comes off the books.
What's the BIA have any concerns?
We're just meeting with them.
Not yet.
We gotta
Tomorrow.
find out.
We'll find out tomorrow.
They have a copy of the study. They have a copy of the
Yeah.
fee, recommended fee increase, which is around $2,500 per connection.
Yeah.
Per EDU for sewer. Only.
Yeah, and so the reasons we have this increase is last year, when we put this budget together, the board had just adopted this project. So we were kind of new. We had the consultant on board, but we didn't have any documents. So, and you'll hear this theme when we talk about why are there budget increases. Generally, it's because at the time we put this budget together, at this time of the year, we have the information we have, and inevitably things change. So last year at that point, we didn't have the consultant on board enough to have a real estimate. So it was a placeholder, just our best guess. Then of course the budget gets adopted, we get the consultant on board. Now they've actually got extensive estimates that have been vetted, reviewed, and now we've got a more solid number to go off of. That's the number that we're using now moving forward with this budget. That's where that increase.
Structurally, I think the committee members should appreciate that basically the project got longer. So when we analyzed it, it was more pipe than we initially thought. And when we looked at the pipe's significantly deeper. I think it's 16 feet deep in spots. So it's not 5 feet deep in the ground.
Yeah, it's almost 17,000 feet of pipe replacement in the street in Twin Oaks, so it's a significant project. It's very significant.
At least there's no traffic.
Yeah, there's no traffic on Twin Oaks Valley Road. Yeah, right.
So all you people who live up in Temecula, do not take Twin Oaks to Deer Springs.
Yeah.
I used to go that way. It's been years.
Yeah, there's pavement replacement. There's going to be median replacement, landscaping. Anyways, it's an extensive restoration project as well. So then the next project, I think, is the chlorine contact tank expansion. I think the board's seen this come in front of you a number of times for environmental approval and stuff. So this, of course, is the expansion of our CCT. We're adding a third basin. We're increasing the capacity from 5 MGD to 6.5 MGD for the creation of recycled water in the tertiary phase. And the reason for the increase is really at this time last year when we were putting the budget together, we were using estimates at that time. since that time, now we've got a year of design that's continued, a year of improvement in scope. We've added some design scope. I think we had a 20% increase in our design costs. And that's because many decisions, we added covers to the design for the CCTs, and this is to help prevent violations while we're constructing the project. We're actually combining this project with the conversion to sodium hypochlorite. So we're going to have, even though we have two separate budgeted projects, we're going to have one contractor, one inspector. So there's a sort of a blending of those projects, which project plans, which adds cost. In the design phase, we did some additional potholing. We had some environmental work because we had an amendment to our PEIR, which came to the board. So all those costs over the course of the year increased our design costs. We also had a much tighter construction estimate, right? So the prior estimate was based on a planning document, or PDR. Now we're at actual plans are completed. So we've got a much better estimate to go off of. So this project is currently out for bid. Bids are due in May. So we're much farther along in the project. And so those numbers get much more tighter.
Where two reclaim customers contribute to this?
They will end up, but we're negotiating a new contract.
Yeah, that's
then,
what I was
so,
thinking.
so within our new contract, we put in all of our recycled water projects and the capitalizations of those projects. Everything as from the core contact. Now, the good news also, a little silver lining, and I say I want to emphasize little, is we will be more eligible for a higher grant funding with the increase. But as you guys are aware, as the committee is aware, the grant funding is 25 cents on the dollar. So you're still spending 75 cents to get to 25 cents. But at least it's better than nothing.
Yeah, we currently have about 3.2 million awarded to the district for reimbursement, and we're going for more. So that's money that we'll get back. Of course, we have to budget for that. We don't get that. It takes years actually to get that money back into our coffers, but that's part of this project as well.
What's the schedule on the new reclaim agreement?
Well, optimistically, we wanted to get it before Vicky retires. I don't know if that's going to happen, which Vicky's retiring in May. But Jason and I are working with the finance team here, putting together a draft budget for OMWD and Carlsbad to review by, I'm hoping, end of next week, with real numbers in it and quantities. I just got Carlsbad pinned down about a week and a half ago on quantities, and I've told them we can't even move forward unless we know what quantity you want. It'll be a traditional take or pay agreement, just like most other agreements.
Are they conceptually in agreement with
Yes.
contributing to?
Yeah, they're conceptually in agreement with contributing to everything that's recycled water except for the conversions of sodium hydrochloride, because that is something that the district wants. It doesn't actually increase or add value to them. As far from a safety standpoint, something that's necessary. I understand their point on that. That's the only thing that the staff is considering, not including everything else is included. So now capitalization of a concrete tank is probably going to be like 30 years. So we'll get reimbursed through water rates for over 30 years. The good news is the contract is a long-term contract. So.
Yeah, so the bulk of the change for this project was last year we were using that PDR document. Like I said, we had a construction estimate of about 8.3. Current estimate is 11.7 million for the construction project. So that's the big difference for why there's a increase requested. Any questions on these projects or any others that you see?
I can't see any.
Thank you.
Good job.
It's great to use some color though. It would be nice to see, there's public noise piece color, but priority of projects as well as upcoming dates and stuff like that. It would just help from a glance to be able to determine some of that.
Right now, I think it's just highest value to lowest value.
Yeah,
That's the only thing.
That's what I'm saying. If you go with colors, then you can, kind of make more sense of it, even when it's sorted in this way.
Are you writing this down?
Add color.
You did.
It's got a different color highlight.
One clip art.
Just put it on the screen right now.
It's on this budget cut, just all the highlighters they have in there. Okay, so you wanna
Carry on.
carry on?
Okay, so continuing on to the next slide.
So no colors.
With carryover projects, this is another portion of the CIP master page showing the 5-year spending plan for the carryover projects on the far right. It is important to note that the board will be asked to approve 1-year capital project spending for fiscal year 2024-25 only, which totals $32.4 million. And the 5 largest projects are the Tres Amigos waterline replacement, chlorine contact tank expansion, Montiel lift station, Meadowlark fail-safe rehabilitation, and City of San Marcos Creek District.
Good news is all those trains have left the station. They're all either about to be in construction or in construction.
Yeah, and I know that's a question that you always ask is can we do it? And historically the answer is no, we can't.
Can
And
we someday do it?
yeah, but in this case, James is right. All these projects,
All those projects.
all
not
those big,
not all those.
sorry, all those big projects have left the station. Tres Amigos is actually let's see, I think that project is out to, or it's going to be out to bid in the next
By end of the month.
yeah, by the end of the month. What's the other? You've got the failsafe is currently under construction. It's about 34% out in build. That's failsafe. The conversion project is out to bid right now. It's on the street. The City of San Marcos, that's an interesting one. That's the creek project, right? Those are the bridges that have been constructed. The project's actually done. The city's billed us, but we're not in agreement with some of the billing, and so we're trying to work those out. Hoping to get about, well, yeah, so we're hoping to pay them about $2 million this year, this fiscal year, with that being the balance for next fiscal year as we resolve some of these issues. So, oh, and the Montiel lift station, that project has been awarded. We're in a material procurement phase. As you know, electrical components have this long lead items. So we're getting that, and that's actually scheduled to break ground in August. So there's a high amount of confidence that this is going to get built out next fiscal year for these large projects. So, and you have any questions about those projects specifically? I can talk about those.
Do you normally include a history of capital project spending, like over the past X number of years?
I track it. Yeah, we don't have it in the presentation, but I'm happy to show like a budget actual.
We mainly do just in embarrass.
He does it. He uses it as a hammer.
Yeah, I send it to him all the time.
Before years
It
ago.
might be helpful.
And I'm like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
I'm like, "Here's what happened?"
We've got big appetites, but we can't always. Yes, historically, I think we're around 20 but in budgeted, but actual is around 10. And I say that with I kind of cringe, and there's a lot of obviously there's a lot of reasons for that. As you know, projects are they're very dynamic, they're very fluid. Scope changes all the time. We get resistance from other agencies. It's just there's a lot of moving pieces.
Yeah,
we try to be more realistic. We're always trying.
A little bit sensitive to it when we get criticized for our reserve levels. You know, our reasoning was we've got these big capital projects that we have to accomplish.
Yeah,
it kind of shoots holes in that.
And I always try to remind people this last August, the board approved about 13 million in construction projects. And that's actually what we're working on. And these big trains have left the station. They are going to hit. There's no stopping them.
Wes and Jason and I have a little inside bet on how much money we'll actually spend next year, and Wes is on one end, Jason's on the other end, and I'm kind of.
I think I want in on some of
And
that.
I am always and we are always trying to be as realistic. That magic 8 ball is cloudy.
But what we are doing actually that's been different, and it's in it's going to be in future budgets. We're looking at projects, you know, because project managers put down their ideal project schedule, okay? And then we as management cut and extend things for many reasons. A, do we have the throughput capacity? B, do we have the need? A lot of times the need's always there, and it's more throughput capacity, and then see, how does it hit our reserves? Can we afford it? Okay, now what we're doing is we're approaching it a little different. Jason's actually done a job and said, okay, if this is a 9 months job, I'm gonna assume 12 or 14 months, just from natural. If it's a 1 year design, I'm assuming a year and a half, because especially if there's property acquisition, a lot of things we got been held up on historically is property acquisition, environmental and compliance. Those are things that should take 90 days and it takes 450 days. So, and you can't move forward without the easement.
Yeah, and Tres Amigos pipeline was a perfect example. We had to get an easement, acquire an easement through the farm that we were going through, and it took much longer than anticipated. Additionally, we had to confer with numerous Native American tribes. That process took longer. So these are the things that we try to gauge, but sometimes we miss the mark on
The
schedule.
farmer actually agreed right away to our easement request, and he agreed to a different easement request. And he basically changed his mind at least 4 times.
At least.
Yeah.
Well, he enjoys ripping through our line with his
Yeah.
tractor.
So we're starting to bake that in, and as we're baking that in, what our goal is to get to maybe that 75% over time of what's budgeted to spend on the capital side.
Yeah, we know that there's improvement that needs to happen there. And only for the committee's benefit, so that I can point out that 32 million, like James said, that first blush was around 56.
Literally 56.
Yes, so
I was in shock.
yes, and I worked that down to 32. I'm still cringing a little bit, but again, we've got these big trains that have left the station, so I'm hoping
Well,
we can do
that's the
better
reason
than.
I ask if you need help staff wise. I mean,
Well, and that's why bringing on GEI has really, I think, borne good fruit. We're happy with that, but I think, as Les was mentioning in the salaries presentation, there has been a lot of turnover. We do have a lot of new staff. It takes a while to ramp up, and I'll be honest, in the last 2 recruitments for engineers are it's
very shallow.
it will get 2 or 3 applicants. So this idea that we're going to get a lot of applicants is we have to temper that with reality.
At the last
Absolutely.
water authority, ma'am, there are 3 or 4 agencies that are all looking for engineers,
Yeah.
and the GM to GM discussion was, we can't find any. We can't find any that are qualified. We can't find any that can meet the spot. We can't grow them in-house because they don't have the degree.
Like wastewater operators.
I just
instrument
say we're at the
control
same
thing.
problem right now.
It's industry wide in all sectors.
Yeah, we have a
for us.
wastewater operator position out. I think we have we had 7 applications, 2 of them kind of qualified because they answered the questionnaire right. They don't
Yeah,
have-
but they have no
that's about it.
certification.
They don't have the certifications.
Kind of qualified.
Well, they answered the questionnaire right.
They have a pulse, I think.
They signed their name.
Maybe they're robots.
So,
But with that, I'm still very happy with the output. I know we're not meeting our goals, but I am happy with the output, and our schedules we're doing, like you said, we're doing a lot with less.
And the challenging thing is, through all the discussions, whether or not we agree or disagree, one thing I think we do agree on is that these projects need to be done.
Yeah,
they're, you know,
absolutely.
the costing of the jobs is accurate. The jobs need to be done. They need to get done at some point. It's just really the timing of them and how we.
Yeah, the worst thing is kicking the can down the road from an asset management perspective.
And I'm not encouraging doing that. I just, when I see when we hit 47% of our budget last year, I'm like, hopefully we can do better.
Yep.
And we just work together to try to improve that ratio. They probably need help over there to get some of the stuff done because it needs to get done.
Right.
Who would have thought a finance guy would yell at you for not spending enough?
Right.
Well,
I get yelled at for both things.
Well, yes, me too.
Excellent.
I usually get yelled
it is just
at. You're gonna exceed your budget.
Jody, sorry for all the interruptions.
Oh, no problem. Okay, so moving on to the next slide. New projects are projects that have not been worked on in prior years. The total amount for new projects being requested for 24-25 is 83.3 million. Of that 83.3 million total, 34.4 is for Encina. The district has 22.4% ownership in Encina, so this percent of their capital is included here. And then 36.2 is for future projects, and future projects are projects that will not be worked on during 24-25, but are included for multi-year financial planning purposes. There is a project page included in the budget document for these future projects that kind of list what the projects are. And so that leaves 21 remaining new projects being requested, totaling around 12.8 million. And of that amount, the largest new request is 8.4 million for the SCADA remote site upgrade project. And I don't know if there's any
And for once, it's
questions
not me. I
about
didn't
that.
do it.
Matthias had to wait
Matthias?
5 hours.
If
So
there-
I can speak on that, or I
If
don't
you'd like
want
to
to
go
steal
into
your
more
thunder.
detail or for any questions about that project.
Yeah, I'd like to know about 8.4 million.
I'm sure
That,
you
no,
will.
that's not the fiscal year budget. is it?
Yeah, let's go into the
Go-
5-year
Yeah,
spending.
go into
just
the
give
5-year
them more.
spending so they can
Okay.
see what they're looking at.
So before we do that though, Jody, I think it's gonna mention that the total, if you want to talk about that before we switch over to Matthias's discussion of the spending.
Oh,
Yeah.
so, okay, the total capital project for all the years is that $227.8 million.
So that's the 10-year capital spending budget. It's not what's being approved. That's our 10-year plan. And it went up from 137 million last year to 227 million this year. The big changes were, Jason mentioned, the $40 million in
Yeah.
the land outfall,
Yeah,
there's
those two
$21 million.
projects.
That's 61 million of it. And then we have another 16 million in the future projects, which also is not technically being approved this year. That's just for our future plan. That's almost 80 million of the $88 million increase from year to year. So just to give a little more detail on that before we switch gears to the 5-year spending.
And those future projects were really pulled from our master plan. So those are pulled from, documents that have been adopted and really now brought into this 10-year, outlook.
Yeah, it's a good call. The future projects is kind of a revolving door. So as you move down in the timeline, the phasing of the future projects, if the future project list coming off the master plan may stay on there for years before it becomes a real project. So you'll see it constantly roll on and roll off. It'll fluctuate. So it gives you an idea.
Yeah, and you can see it there in the bottom. I know it's not very big, but you can see the future project thing, give them out the spending here. So next year, $251,000 of the project, future projects that weren't started this year should roll into current project requests next year, and then $1.2 million, and then $7.2 million, and then 5.5 and 21, 22.1. So most of them are in the outer 10-year plan.
But in reality, you'll see that kind of, we always push future projects out based on need.
Yeah.
So because the master plan is a planning document, so it hits a window. And so we're obligated to show it based on that window for our long-term plan to stay consistent. But the actual allocation and where that project is in reality is based on the actual need.
Are we developing a replacement master plan? Is that part of the
Yes.
asset management?
Yeah, now this doesn't reflect that yet.
Right.
There are replacement projects and stuff on here already, but we'll be coming to the board soon.
For the asset management plan.
Yeah.
Have the memo ready for review.
It's sitting on my desk to review.
So we'll be coming to the board as early as the 17th.
Yeah.
Okay, on the 17th.
That's the
Okay.
plan.
So we'll be coming to the board on
We
the
got 24
17th.
hours to review and get it.
I was just gonna
So-
say, isn't that new?
Well,
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet, so that's
I'll be
why I'm
working
hesitant.
on it.
So we'll be coming with a presentation from
Yeah,
our
we're
consultant.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the asset management plan is a master plan for asset replacement. And it shows you kind of the cost benefits, including some of the decision points for the board that could result in, to be honest, hundreds of millions of dollars in savings for the district over the course of asset life, which is 50, 75 years. So.
You don't
without
want to give away the punchline now, though, do you?
I just did.
You kind of just did. So without taking away from Jody's presentation, we'll go to this side and then we'll kind of rewind. But for now, so you have the detail. Matthias, what he'll be discussing is up here, this 8.4, and you can see the spending is about $1 million, 4.5, and 2.9. So it just gives you a little bit more an idea what the spending will be on this.
That's the SCADA.
Yeah.
You just save money. Operators learn Mandarin, Russian, and Farsi, and then it won't be a problem. Everybody's trying to hack us, right?
A negotiation committee,
Yeah.
see how much we're gonna pay out.
Right,
Do that.
There, that too, yeah.
Want to give a quick update?
Yeah, absolutely. My turn. Good afternoon. It would be morning, but good afternoon, members of the board. Wanted to give you kind of a brief overview of the SCADA remote site upgrades project. Throughout the past several years, IT and OT, the other side of the house, electricians, primarily a lot of EDS groups, the water operators, have run into issues with reliability of existing systems. Reliability from a infrastructure standpoint, reliability from a remote site point of view. So we have antiquated, obsolete equipment here at our primary facility, at our MRF location, and at our 70 remote locations. So this particular project will address the remote locations. So it's been a two-part project. The primary driver or effort for the past several years, or 2 years exactly now, because this is the second year of this initiative, was to update and ensure reliability of our core infrastructure located here at our MRF reclamation facilities. The second part of this project is the upgrade of all of our remote sites. The field equipment, just to give you an idea, is anywhere between 25 and 40 years old. And to give you a little bit more detail, not only are we talking about antiquated hardware that's out in the field, we're talking about a redesign of electrical panels. We're talking about setting standards, which unfortunately, when you visit some of the remote sites, you notice that there is no standardization. In addition to that, we're talking about rewriting and essentially recreating programs that were written and built several years ago that are still transmitting information into what we've now created is a new system. So you have all these very old systems that are out in the field that are reporting information back to our headquarters. So as you can imagine, a lot of the older equipment is limited in its ability to report information. It's not as intelligent. The communications protocols are very old. The amount of data that can be transmitted between remote locations and our headquarters facility, where everything reports into, is an issue, has become an issue. So commands essentially that are sent out or received because of the fact that the equipment is old and the transmissions, communications are old, could take a very long time when you want to send a remote command out or receive a remote command. And so without being too long-winded, which I may already be too long-winded, so apologies for that, but this project really deals with upgrading all of those remote locations, all of the ancillary applications, really creating standards. So it's not quite as simple as, can't you just rip and replace this card and just plug it in? Well, that's a component, but we're really talking about reverse engineering systems that have been in place for 40 years that haven't been documented. So a lot of this effort is going to be man hours. Not so much hardware. There is going to be hardware component as well.
I had a little bit of sticker shock, but I did a project just like this 30 years ago. It was about $2 million. So this sounds about right.
Yeah.
And I want to just kind of add another component, more of a human-based component of this. So we still have 20-25% growth in our water system and 35+% growth in our sewer system. And one of the things that the district needs is a modern SCADA system for operations, because it will reduce the amount of labor hours that's required to do the same tasks. Having that data, the information, the analytics will also plug into our future asset management systems to the decision matrix. Because at the end of the day, if you grow staff to meet our existing level of service, we're going to have to significantly increase on the ops side. And then once you increase on the ops side, you have to increase all the support staff that's non-ops, not at the same level, but at some ratio. But if you have the technology to basically work smarter instead of harder, you will significantly reduce the amount of future staffing. So this investment in our system is not only for modernization and security, it actually has a cost benefit in the long run. And yes, I did read your thing, even though you said it to me late.
Thank
But on the flip side, which Matthias is not aware of, is when we look at our future staffing planning, it makes a significant
Yeah,
difference.
that's tremendous labor saving system.
Yeah, so and right now we're kind of at capacity of what we can do with the existing systems. And we've seen labor hours creep up, overtime creep up already. And if we had some of these, not only functionality, but also the systems and the data over time, we'll be able to mitigate that and then also mitigate the growth potential in staff as our systems grow. So,
Well, I'm a big advocate for this. I mean, I personally observed on the tour, some systems running on Windows 95, I believe. Not quite that, but it felt like that.
You're not that far off.
Windows 7.
Yep, you're pretty close.
Yeah.
So
Unsupported,
It's
yeah.
absolutely critical. that,
ME.
Yes. It's critical that we get these systems upgraded as fast as possible. The one thing is that technology is moving so fast right now. A lot of the technology that we saw come was driven through games, actually, because people wanted better graphics, right? And so that was kind of like the first boom of technology that got us here. Now with AI, you're going to see another acceleration like nobody's ever seen before. So I would just say, if possible, we should try to stretch this out over even more years, because maybe not try to front load it as much, but at the same time, I'm valuing your judgment here, and it seems like you put a lot of work into this, and those systems are top priority to get secured, especially knowing what we know about threats and threat actors out there. But yeah, it's a new world. It's about to be.
There has been a lot of work completed, like you were saying here, in central operations, where you're part of that tour there, and then down at the plant. So I think that was a lot of the front loading right there, is we had to get things here to where they could receive the data from the new, and now the employee stolen from O&M went to the TIAS.
Thank you for.
Yeah, and
that.
he's an electrician, and he's taken the initiative to learn how to do the SCADA programming, and he's very smart on that. So that actually has been fantastic, because I was one of the few people in operations years ago that felt that OT needed to be under IT because of all the hackers and everything that was happening back then. It's like, we can't keep them separate anymore.
Right.
And Matthias done a great job, brought on EA, which is a big company to build our standards, which he's right, we didn't really have them before. This guy programmed it this way, this guy programmed it that way. So a lot of the hard, heavy labor setting that foundation has really been completed. Now we just need to bring it to the rest of the system.
So Director, yeah.
We're far more secure than we were just
No, not with you.
2
I'm
years
gonna
ago.
knock on wood. So yeah, as everybody in the room may or may not know, the Encina got recently hacked, and I don't have all the details because they're still pretty hush hush about it. But they're today in their finance committee, their finance officer, chief financial officer, manager, talked about the amount of labor hours that their staff has taken just to overcome to make their systems functional. And they still don't have full functionality of all their systems, and they're still doing things manually because of the hack. So, and we're talking, they're going on 2 months plus now.
Was it a ransomware?
They haven't actually publicly said. I know some people may know, but they actually haven't publicly announced anything.
So we get alerts every week, probably from the federal government, from CISA trying to.
I'm still waiting for my money from Kenya.
Yeah. So Director, you made a really good point. I wanted to make sure I addressed that in my comments. You mentioned kind of evaluation of options, whether we essentially follow the 3-year, potentially the 3-year recommendation, or we stretch this out further years. And that was part of the write-up that I provided Wes and James. Was that late last night or this morning? I don't know. Was it first thing this morning?
I saw it this
It's a
morning.
blur. I was working on it for a good amount of late last night. Anyway, the approach, we looked at three things. Ultimately, a single upfront project to upgrade the sites, individual upgrade projects for each site handled over multiple years. And then obviously I wanted to present the option, which I don't recommend, but I always want to present all the options, which is leave things as is and run to failure, essentially update the sites. I don't recommend that, but I'm going to present all the options. While going through and evaluating the three approaches, it made sense for us to, with regards to economies of scale and being able to ensure long-term reliability, to do as much of the procurement and as much of that work in as reduced of a time period as we possibly can, because the standards that are going to be done, those things are going to be set and they're not going to change. For the next, I'd say we get the system, it's going to be 25 to 30 years, essentially. What I'm not talking about here is the individual components. I do agree with you. What you're saying is you can stretch some, the technology is going to change, but the technology in and of itself is relatively cheap. I'll give you an example. I'm probably giving you too much information, but a piece of equipment that failed that I was talking to James about maybe last month, an old card that needed to be replaced. The old card was roughly about $8,000. There are multiple cards in these systems. So we're just talking about one card, $8,000.
It's just because it's rare these days.
Used,
That's it, used.
refurbished.
It's going to get to a certain point where we're buying these things off eBay or these other,
From
I don't wanna
China-
go-
from China.
yeah, I mean, ultimately, yes. So
Whereas
without,
a new one might cost only $1,000.
You're exactly, that's exactly right. It was
$1,500.
$1,500. So there you go, right there. You stretch it, 5-10 years, then you're dealing with break fixes. And part of the analysis, I don't want to get into the weeds. Part of the analysis was a combination of stretching out and or run to failure versus kind of getting it done within a 3-year period. And it was significantly more to stretch it.
Yep.
And
As
so,
I said, I trust your judgment.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot went into this.
well, I want to give you as much information as I
Appreciate it.
possibly can. And so we were working stuff last night to make sure we were ready. So to answer those questions.
And
So
then
I'm glad you asked, because I have
just
the
for
answer.
the public's benefit, and I look to, all of this that we're doing in this great committee here, but how could they click through and see where the 8.4 million goes to, that make sure that it doesn't go to Matthias, for instance? And that's just an example.
Yeah.
I got it.
So, I mean, we do have our internal controls, and then those controls are also audited.
Yeah.
So, and they're audited by independent auditor, and anything, and capital projects are one of the things that auditors both check pretty diligently, and they'll do random checks on certain projects and
Yeah,
get down
for sure.
even deeper.
If they send you,
Yeah.
what is this? Show me this.
Yeah,
and this.
show me the paper trail, let me follow the money. So,
Yeah.
And for parts, part of our purchasing policy too, anything over $1,500, we have to get 3 quotes minimum.
Great.
So
And I'll tell you, that's been problematic. Trying to get 3 quotes from vendors that literally do not have supply has been a nightmare.
Right.
you have to make the attempt to make the.
Well, yes, yeah. So
Well, yeah, I mean, there's only one brand of something,
Yeah.
trying to give up quotes on the same piece of equipment.
yeah,
You usually run into that.
Yeah, there's allocation and notes for single sourcing, but you have to justify it.
So kudos to Ed, because there are some parts that we've been trying to get a hold of recently that the manufacturers have just told us that they don't make them anymore. So kudos to Ed, because he bought a lot of parts and they're stored. So
15 years ago.
yeah,
Wow.
so
We saw the writing on the wall back
Yeah.
then, and I think it was like 40,000 we spent 15 years ago, and enough. A lot of the parts are the same for like pressure stations. You have this, like pump stations, you have this lift
Interchangeable,
station. So I bought enough to rebuild at least 1 or 2 of each site and put it on the shelf. And we replaced them. We back when they were cheaper. When we used one, we bought another one and set it on the shelf. But now it's down to
now we're using and we can't buy anymore. And so that's why I want to, we want to move forward on
Yeah,
this.
so we have this kind of almost race between using up stored supplies that we bought at a very, very reasonable cost.
Right.
And then the cost of replacing that is just not sustainable. And then the new systems replacement cost is very sustainable, but we have to pay to do the new system.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, it's this sticker shocker, at least looking at, oh man, $8 million.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, $8 million versus, I can't remember, it was a 16 million if we did like a run to failure with the kind of the emergency main break situations where you have someone that has to review code that was written 20 years ago and isn't documented whatsoever.
So
And they have to do it at midnight because that's when it failed.
how old is our central control system?
Well,
Now-
we have new stuff in there now.
We have
but
new
it-
stuff
It
now.
was put in 96,
And when was it replaced? Just recently?
just.
Last year.
Last year.
this,
Yeah, so,
this year, last year.
That's
and
a
it was,
long time to.
it was
Yeah.
Allen Bradley. So when we built the system, we went with the Cadillac of hardware and it has lasted. And a lot of the stuff, even like the radios that we upgraded to over the years, we went to different series with the Utilinet, Cellnet radios. They were bulletproof until they got hit by lightning. They didn't fail. I mean, that's the only time I really had a failure on those. Software was horrible. I'd like to shoot Landis and Gear software developers right in the head, but really bulletproof system. So even though it's old, but the problem is it doesn't talk to any of the new stuff. It doesn't no Ethernet, doesn't know anything, but the old school, and you're basically at like 9,600 baud rate.
You're not going to get a camera feed,
dial-up.
right? You're not going to get a camera feed from a remote site. Something's happening at the remote site. You're it's either up or down. That's what I can tell you. So that will change.
So those will be internet based.
Yeah, it's a different communications protocol. Yeah, it'll be yes, like the cable that you plug into your computer, right? And now it's a serial connector. Yes, it's old, very old, very old.
Speaking of
So-
cameras, make sure you keep those on separate networks and stuff that.
The cameras we're using are all vetted by DHS. In addition, parts are not, we're using a vendor that sources all of their parts and does everything here in the States. So, but yes, and I do not trust them. I mean, yes.
Always good.
Yep.
It's easy enough to
Yeah.
set up
So
multiple
one of our other projects, which we haven't mentioned, and it might not be on here, is a zero trust. That's what we're planning on doing, right? I mean, anyone that comes in here, nothing is trusted. That's how you should operate. So we take that same approach, more so on the SCADA side. So that's what we're doing. So, yep.
Sorry, Jody.
Okay, so this slide just shows of the $83.3 million in new requests, $10.7 million will be going to the board for approval, and that's mostly for the Encina wastewater plan. And that's it. And here is the section of the budget for vehicles and equipment. Total vehicles is budgeted at 2.2 million. That amount includes certain vehicles that were proposed in prior years and are being carried forward due to delayed receipt of vehicles. And they are highlighted in yellow. There are $1.6 million in new requests for 2025. And the larger proposed purchases are Vector sewer cleaner and Ford F-550. Kenworth.
That carryover, we're hoping before the budget's finalized can drop off. We finally actually have the truck itself, the body, the chassis. We're waiting on the air compressor. So it's finally being built and we're hoping to take possession of that before we
We're finally
finalize
getting
the
some
budget.
more COVID vehicles.
That one and the Freightliner dump truck, so 230,000, another 205,000. We're hoping when Wes brings the final budget forward, those are gone because it's previously approved money. And it has to get carried over when we don't spend it.
Sorry, go ahead.
Is that all of the?
There's one more, the 110 for the Cat 420 backhoe. So then, yeah, just besides that, if you have any questions about what those vehicles are, as far as that's what Ed's talking about.
I do want to mention there's two electric vehicles up there that are pool vehicles, that 45,000 a piece. So those are strategically put there. We may or may not actually do anything with those because SDG&E has a power your drive program. And if you budget for a couple, so it has nothing to do with the state program. It has nothing to do with the state heavy vehicle replacements for F-250s and above. But what this program does is if you budget electric vehicles in your fleet and you're an agency, a government agency, SDG will pay for all the infrastructure to your facility. And the option that we're looking at is pay for up to 80% of the infrastructure for your charging facilities. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in savings to the district for budgeting two vehicles that need to be replaced anyway. They're two of the and they're pool vehicles. And the use case for Vallecitos for our pool vehicles, I'll give you an idea. The vehicle that is the admin vehicle, which is the vehicle I primary drive, is 2003 and it's got 60,000 miles on it. And the reason why it's in bad shape is because it doesn't get driven enough, and mechanical, gas ice vehicles need to get driven regularly, while electric vehicles really sit. It's not a big deal. So we feel that using an electric vehicle for a pool vehicle, which gets driven infrequently, is actually a pretty good use case. And if we don't get the power your drive, if we don't get approved, that money will never be spent. So it's put there strategic.
Why was the Equinox picked up in the testing?
Cost, maybe. To be honest,
They're like the same.
yeah, it will.
Cuts in price for
The mechanics
I
want
went mid-range when I put it in.
the mechanics want that to be switched out for a Mach-E because they want to stick with Ford products. And what I told them is I don't think the GM should be driving around a Mustang.
Yeah, but like, honestly, if you look at the future of EV, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's basically only Tesla for now. These are all experiments from Chevy,
Yeah, I
from
agree.
Ford, and they haven't been good experiments yet.
And that's just a placeholder.
Yeah.
So just because we put, whether it's a Chevy or Kenworth or whatever like that, we still go out and get whatever's going to be the best.
You're absolutely right. We're looking at about a $45,000 vehicle.
Yep.
So it could be a Tesla, it could be a Ford, it could be if the Rivian R2 was out, that would be a good option for it. And so at this point we haven't made, but then there's also the perception if a public person sees somebody riding around what they feel is a luxury vehicle or something to that effect, while Chevy and Ford doesn't have that attached to them.
You're not going to get a dual motor for 45,000.
No, well, I don't think we need one. So I don't need the 0 to 60.
Yeah.
So, but yes,
I mean, wrapping it in Vallecitos and using it as a recruitment tool and stuff like that. There's lots of multi-purpose,
so, but there's board members will ask about that if they see it in the budget. That's the reason for it. The reasons for it to strategically qualify for the Power Your Drive program, which will provide us more savings than the cost.
Yeah, and you're only required to do 2 for them to build out charging infrastructure for.
2 and a commitment to do more in the future.
Yeah.
But that commitment is not. I don't actually know if that commitment's in writing or not. But right now it's 2.
The CARB regulations are going to make us have that commitment
Yeah.
anyway. So
Yeah.
it's really the program's a win-win for us to
Right.
meet those regulations. The 2 smaller vehicles, they don't count towards the CARB rule, but the only thing that we're requesting, all of the ones that are highlighted, the PO, everything was written before 2024, so they don't count. And anything below F-250 weight-wise doesn't count. So the only thing that we're gonna have to ask for an exemption is the Vector. And we pushed that back last year, and now by the time we get this thing built, because they're
Pretty
custom.
legit exemption.
You don't have any-
Yeah,
for
so that's a
Vector?
legit exemption, but it's huge expense at
Right.
$785,000, and they're only going up in price.
Tesla Vector's not out yet.
Well, the
No.
Tesla, you gotta wait for the Tesla Semi to get out before they make the Vector.
The semi's out. It's
I know.
doing well from my understanding. So,
So drive it in the cold.
yeah.
That's all that.
We live in Southern California. We're pretty good. We got a week or 2 out of the year. So yeah, so that somebody on the board will ask about this, and you're right. It may not be the Chevy, but the reason it's there is strategic. So this way we get more benefit out of it than the cost.
So if no questions on this, we'll move on to the next part. You ready?
Mhm.
See if I can get my mouse going. There you go.
Okay, and so here is the budget for facilities and equipment. 45,000, which includes the three items listed here for 15,000 each that are requested to be replaced. And the overall total for vehicles and equipment proposed budget is 2.3 million.
What qualifies, is a certain threshold to be put on this list?
It's just the difference between vehicles and mobile equipment or actual equipment.
That's
This
10
is
10,000.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, to
That's
be
in-
capital.
Yeah,
One
10,000
year.
and above, if it's a single, so if we had three things that added up to 10,000, that would go in our materials and services budget that you saw last meeting. But instead, this is single items.
Capital policy is 10,000 greater and greater than 1 year useful life. Okay, so next.
And so, again, our budget calendar for May. We'll be working on the 5-year and 10-year reserve projections and continue to review, revise, and refine the first draft of the proposed budget. And we will have 2 full board meetings in May. May 1st, we'll have a draft budget update and discuss board requested items. And then on the 15th, there will be a first review of the proposed budget. And then in June, the budget will continue to review, revise, and refine the draft proposed budget, and the budget will go to the full board on June 5th for approval. And that is the end of our presentation.
Any questions?
Well, I would just say I'm concerned for the future. I see the writings on the wall. Mike made that abundantly clear that if you look at our average customer's bill, it sounds like they're going to go from $100 to maybe $130 with what I'm hearing here. And it's concerning. It should concern us all because this is our community as well. And I would just ask that we try to think outside the box and be creative. And there's been lots of ways that we've discussed this, the investment revenue being one of those, which, by the way, guess where the interest rates went?
I just sent them an article.
So I'm glad that we've been
And no rate cuts for probably the next year, at least when they call for 3 or 4
Yeah,
originally.
correct.
So, yeah.
And so this investment lady thought I was a little crazy, but I'm glad I was a little bit vindicated here, and you know, that's going to result in some serious revenue for us. And you know, grants are another thing that President Boyd Hodgson brings up often, and I feel that we maybe underutilize, and they do certainly take a lot of staff's time, but you know, there's auxiliary methods for applying for grants these days.
We actually have 2 grant consultants on staff that in our as needed.
Yep.
And they're actually being utilized on several projects already. We don't really talk about them here, but because we don't like to bring them up until we actually get the
Right.
grant. Then we brag about them, but if we don't get the grant, we don't want you to know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
well, I mean, it's we don't qualify. We don't highly qualify for grants because we don't have a disadvantaged status, is what it comes down to. We don't rely on tax revenue. We do have some disadvantaged communities. So the grants that we do get are more specific for water, wastewater agencies, but the cities that have social services and everything else with the program that also have utilities like water or sewer, they get a higher score rating just because of the way they're made up. So grants are tough for special districts, especially since they can look at us and say, "Oh, you just raise your rate, you raise your money. It's not a big deal."
Mhm.
But we are pursuing grants
Yeah.
where we can.
Totally hear you, and just think that's great. We're pursuing them. We can always
Yep.
get more creative in the ways in which we're pursuing them as well. And then public-private partnerships, which we talk about often but don't take enough action on, I feel is certainly something that we can be creative on for the future. And you know, my main priority is keeping us at that $100 a month level instead of $130 a month level. So trying to work with you all to make that happen, and that comes through you can only do it in 2 ways. 1, you make more money, or 2, you cut the money you're spending already. So gotta look inside and figure out ways to do that. And I'm here to help advocate and make that happen.
Yeah, I think the areas of concern in recent years is transition from water supply to water affordability.
And so the finance team and I have been working on some creative solutions that we're gonna start rolling out. Some of those solutions are gonna be assumptions within the budget. They're not approved, because they're not in next year's budget, but they're in future projection year's budget, which also looks at not only how we not doing a new 218 and trying to recoup costs, which are all cost increases, but looking at creative ways that it won't raise people's bills on a monthly basis. So as we get closer to those solutions and we vet some of them out, we'll start talking with the committees and boards about the reality of it. So the truth is, it's going to take us to about the middle of 2025, 2026 to make some of these efforts into reality.
Yep.
So 23/24 where we're in now, we're taking the lumps. We need to take the lumps, unfortunately, with the water authority next fiscal year, or at least half of next fiscal year, and then work on that solution and have them in place before the end of next fiscal year. That's management's goal, and that's what we've been talking about. And we'll vet it through the committees and board and see if those creative solutions have other avenues. Maybe it spurs other discussions. So
Appreciate that. Thank you all for your hard work and great presentation.
Great presentations, great questions. So we really appreciate the information. Thank you.
So the next meeting should be an interesting one because it should be pretty much a draft budget. So you'll get to see a draft budget twice before the recommended budget on June 5th. Next one, hopefully we'll have the full story, so see the reserves and kind of give you the punchline of where we're at, how healthy we are, and where we're going. So it should be very interesting. Might be a little bit of a longer meeting, just depending on the feedback that we get. Plus, it's part of a board meeting, so with the draft budget with the board meeting, but that one I'm excited about.
Great. All right. I think we're done with our agenda, so we're adjourned.
thank you.
Thank you.